From July 27th to August 10th, the men's Olympic volleyball tournament took place at the Paris Expo Porte de Versailles exhibition center, and those 2 weeks were simply amazing. No other tournament can compare to this kind of volleyball show because every player is ready to give their all on the court for a chance to touch an Olympic medal. Throughout this time, I didn't just commentate on the matches, I also tried to keep you updated with regular reviews, so everyone could stay in the loop with the latest news directly from the Olympic courts. So in this video, we won't be talking about the results of the Olympic volleyball tournament. Instead, we'll try to draw some conclusions. But first things first. As usual, let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. First off, I want to highlight the new format of the group stage that the organizers introduced. The 12 national teams were divided into 3 subgroups. Although the number of matches decreased significantly, the importance of each game increased tremendously. Almost every game had some tournament significance, which only fueled additional spectator interest. The only match without any strategic value was the final group stage match between Serbia and Canada, but even that one ended 3-2. Let me give you some statistics. During the entire group stage in Paris, 18 matches were played and 6 of them went to 5 sets. For comparison, throughout the history of the Olympic Games, there have only been more tiebreakers in the group stage in 1992, 2004 and 2021, with 7 each. But remember, those years had a different format with 30 matches in the group stage, so you can easily see the difference. Before we start analyzing each team's performance, I want to share some not-so-happy news. A significant number of players decided to retire from their national teams after these Olympic Games. This list includes Atanasijevic, Podrascanin, Yamuchi, Kentaro, Lucas, Bruno, Leal, Conte, De Checo and Campa. As for Nishida, he has decided to take an indefinite break from his career. Honestly, I'm a bit worried about his mental state. He's dyed his hair grey again, which he's done before when dealing with mental health issues. I hope he can overcome this tough period in his life. But not all team leaders decided to hang up their shoes. Despite Anderson's earlier statements about retiring from the USA national team after these Olympic Games, the bronze medal he won has given him renewed inspiration and motivation. Now he dreams of playing at the home games in Los Angeles in 2028. I hope we get to see the legendary American in action. Despite numerous rumors, Japan's captain Ishikawa has dispelled fans' fears by announcing that he plans to play at least until the next Olympic Games. 39-year-old Grosser doesn't have such ambitious goals, but he's also been inspired by his team's performance and is determined to help Germany at the upcoming World Championship, which will be held in 2025 in the Philippines. Ngapet, the 2-time Olympic MVP, has similar goals. He wants to add a missing gold medal to his extensive collection of national team awards. So until 2025, Erwin will definitely be playing for France. Now let's summarize the team's performances as we did after the Nations League. I'll share my thoughts on the teams in the order of their final rankings after the Olympic Games. Since Egypt finished in 12th place, let's start with them. Frankly, there isn't much positive to say about the African team. Their enthusiasm for the tournament lasted only 2 sets, in the opening match against Poland. After that, their emotional state kept deteriorating. Everyone understood that Egypt had almost no chance in the tournament, but I personally expected them to at least enjoy the Olympic atmosphere, rather than play the remaining matches with sad faces. There were higher expectations for Argentina, considering they were the reigning bronze medalists of the Olympic Games. Unfortunately, all the South American team managed to do in the entire group stage was win a single set. Sadly, I couldn't find anything positive in Argentina's performance. There were lower expectations from the public regarding Canada's performance, although I personally hoped these guys could show their best game and maybe even make it to the playoffs. But that didn't happen. The immense pressure of each match and the status of the tournament undoubtedly weighed heavily on the North American team. The issues they faced at this level of play first became apparent in the Nations League quarterfinal, and here they were multiplied several times over, so we didn't get to see a cohesive game from Canada. The brightest match was against Serbia, where the teams had no tournament objectives left and simply enjoyed the game. It was a great way to end the group stage, and this victory allowed the Serbs to finish the tournament one spot higher than the Canadians. Since we're on the topic of this team, I didn't have any special expectations from them either. As I watched the European team's matches, I didn't understand their game plan or some of their substitutions. Some were untimely, while others didn't quite justify themselves. With all due respect to Atanasievich, Lubric looked like a more stable and dangerous option for scoring points. So it seemed more like a tribute to the opposite who was retiring from the national team. Brazil faced similar problems. The generational change in this team is happening with great difficulty. Players are being replaced not because they are better in terms of playing qualities, but simply because the veterans are leaving the team themselves. It's as if there was no other way. If Wallace hadn't refused to play for the national team, many viewers wouldn't have fully known about Darlan. And now, Bernardinho has once again decided to stick to his old principles by starting Bruno in every match. I'll say it again, the career of this legendary setter deserves all the praise in the world, but at the moment he's being outperformed by Fernando in almost every aspect. Objectively, Bruno's not-so-great play significantly limited his team. Not that Brazil was a clear contender for medals, but with the right lineup and a bit of luck, they could have made it to the semi-finals. Japan finished in 7th place. I hope fans of this national team will forgive me, but they didn't show the game everyone expected from them. I saw a lot of comments saying that Japan would have definitely looked better than Italy in the semifinals and medal matches, but we'll never know for sure because they didn't make it that far. Japan didn't advance, so there's no point in fantasizing about semifinal matches. The Asian team let several match points slip away on their own, so there's no need to speculate. There's no negativity towards Japan or its fans here. I myself enjoy watching this team's matches and also thought they had a shot at competing for medals. But during the group stage they displayed lackluster and dull volleyball, which was nothing like what they had shown before. Only when they returned to their usual strategies did they show a great level of play, leaving a fantastic final impression. Germany left a great final impression. Not only did they exceed the expectations of many analysts, but they also almost knocked out the eventual Olympic champions in the quarterfinals. There's a lot of debate on social media about whether Germany was unfairly treated. I've already shared my opinion on this in previous videos, so I don't see the need to repeat myself. For me, it's much more enjoyable to discuss how bright and competitive this national team is and the excellent work Winiarski has done. I'm eagerly looking forward to the World Championship to closely follow Germany. I must admit, I was a bit worried about Slovenia. The team made their Olympic debut and had left a good impression during the Nations League. Stern's return gave the Slovenians the right to hope for Olympic medals. The opposite only fell out of the top scorers by the end of the tournament, losing just 17 points to the Olympics top scorer, Leon, despite playing 2 fewer matches. Unfortunately, Stern's only bad match of this international season came in the quarterfinal against Poland, where without his usual productivity, Slovenia couldn't advance further. This team also lacks a stable setter who could keep up with the pace of top-level modern volleyball. Maybe Ropret, after his time on the bench in Perugia, will get the much-needed playing time in the Plus Liga and could elevate Slovenia to a new level. Now let's move on to the top 4 teams of the Olympic Games. Unexpectedly for me, Italy finished in 4th place. Both the men's and women's teams were my picks to contend for gold medals. While the women's team confidently handled their task, the men ended up without any medals. Italy certainly lacked coaching flexibility, which I talked about during the medal match reviews. And there's no point in saying they didn't have bench depth. Di Giorgi simply refused to change his starting lineup no matter what was happening on the court. While this strategy had worked before in 2024, for the first time since he took charge of the team in 2019, the Italian coach had to end the international season without medals. One of the reasons could be that, unlike the women, the men's team skipped not the first week of the Nations League but the third, plus the final stage. And that's where the most intense and competitive battles took place, which could have prepared the team for serious challenges. Although if you look at Team USA, they weren't affected by these problems despite a poor Nations League performance, finishing far outside the playoff zone. Although the Americans were the oldest team in the tournament, most of the players had already been through several Olympic cycles, so nothing about the intense atmosphere could surprise them. And honestly, the North Americans didn't look like an old team. They played bright and, in a way, cheeky volleyball. I couldn't think of a better word for their style of play. They could be compared to a young team aiming to score something spectacular. And if they start winning confidently, they can suddenly switch off, forgetting that they need to stay focused until the final whistle. This is what cost them in the semi-final against Poland. And it almost cost them in the group stage match against Germany, as well as in the bronze medal match against Italy. Overall, it was an excellent performance by the USA. With this kind of play, they deserved to win an Olympic medal. Plus, this performance extended the American subscription to Anderson, though there's no set end date for it yet. Number 2. Poland. Along with Italy, this team entered the tournament as one of the main favorites, and according to many analysts, they were the top contender for gold. But it became clear during the group stage that not everything was perfect in this lineup. As it turned out, having a bunch of star players doesn't guarantee victory. Because of the insanely deep bench, Grbić had to experiment with various player combinations to finalize the roster for Paris, which undoubtedly affected the team's overall cohesion. Yes, at the Olympics Poland used almost unchanged combinations, but even that wasn't enough to create a solid game plan. To add to their problems, Poland was extremely unlucky with injuries. In the first match, Fornal got injured, then the team lost Pienik, and in the semi-final, Janusz and Zatorski also got injured. In the case of the libero, there was no one to replace him, so Paweł played on painkillers, but it still affected his productivity in the final match. Nevertheless, for Poland the silver medal, especially for this generation, is a great achievement. This is only the second medal in the history of this team, with the last one being won almost 50 years ago. And probably the happiest person about this was Bartosz Kurek. For the captain, the final was his 24th match for Poland at the Olympic Games, which is now a record achievement. Leon also set an Olympic record by serving at 134 km per hour in the semi-final against the USA. Wilfredo had an outstanding and consistent tournament with no significant flaws. He was reliable, stable and always ready to lead his team. So, in my opinion, this was the best performance by an outside hitter in his current national team. Finally, we have the Olympic champions. To be more precise, the two-time Olympic champions, France. They became the fourth team to win the Olympic Games at home, joining the ranks of the USSR, USA and Brazil. They also became the third team to defend their Olympic title, previously only achieved by the USSR and the USA, and they are the first in history to defend their title at home. I've said many praiseworthy things about this team in my final match review, so I won't repeat myself. It's better to watch that video if you haven't already. Once again, I'll emphasize that France is a team that, if not stopped in the early stages, becomes nearly impossible to beat later on. With the phenomenal synergy they had with the fans, this team looked unbeatable in the final matches. As the players themselves noted, this is a family first and foremost, so it's no surprise that the French volleyball players transform when playing for the national team. And as a fact, after losing 2 sets in the quarterfinals, they went on to win 9 straight sets. Bravo! A well-deserved gold. Unfortunately, not all players received medals at the ceremony. I remind you that at these games, teams were allowed to bring a 13th reserve player. All the medalists had such players, but the USA and France didn't use their reserves, so Ensign and Karl didn't play a single minute. As a result, despite being present at the ceremony, they didn't receive medals, which, to be honest, didn't look very nice. Alright, let's not dwell on the negative. Before wrapping up the video, let's move on to the all-star team. Here's what we have: setter, Brizar, outside hitters, Ngapet and Kleveno, middle blockers, Everall and Kachanowski, opposite, Patry libero, Grebenikov and MVP Ngapet. I won't go into too much detail here, I'm more interested in hearing your opinions on the all-star team, but I'll quickly share my thoughts. No questions about the setter. As I said, after the semi-finals, only Christensen could have competed with the Frenchman, and that's if Antoine had a bad final. But Brizard was fantastic in the final, so there's no doubt about it. There's also no doubt about Grebenikov. If Japan had beaten Italy, there might have been an alternative in Yamamoto, but as it stands, Genya is the undisputed number 1 in this position. The first questions arise regarding the middle blockers. Honestly, I would have put two American players there. Kochanowski was stable only in attack. His impact on the game wasn't as significant as the contributions of Holt and Averill for the USA. They scored more points, made more blocks and served more aces than the Polish middle blocker. But the organizers felt there should be at least one silver medalist in the all-star team. Leon would have fit perfectly here. As I said earlier, he was very productive, stable and showed leadership qualities. Plus, he became the top scorer of the Olympic Games, so he definitely deserved a spot. Of course, Klevenov deserved it too, but we'll come back to him shortly. The position of opposite is undoubtedly a contentious one. Petri played a fantastic final match, but if we consider all the knockout matches, his performance in the earlier rounds wasn't strong enough to justify such a prestigious title. In my opinion, this award should have gone to Romano. The Italian opposite was highly effective throughout each match of these Olympic Games, and there can be no complaints about his play. And if you think that because his team finished 4th, he shouldn't be in the all-star team, then let's give this award to Anderson, who was also incredible. And finally the MVP. If in 2021 there was little doubt about Ngapet's legitimacy as MVP, in 2024 there are definitely some questions. Obviously this award had to go to a French player, but in my subjective hierarchy at least Prizer and especially Klevenov rank higher. Trevor was super impressive in the playoffs. It seemed as if Johnny was deliberately not playing the outside hitter in the early matches, building up his inner energy. For me, Klevenov is the MVP. Who's your candidate? Write in the comments below. Well, that's about it. The Olympics are over, the final review is out, so we'll have to wait another 4 years to dive back into the atmosphere of this volleyball celebration. So make sure to show your appreciation not just to me for my work, but to the entire Olympic tournament. It was amazing. And as always, this was Nick. Love what you do and you'll definitely succeed. See you soon. Bye!